Hey Shepherd Youth, it's Monet. I am here to go through day 4 of the devotional called Storyteller with you guys. I'm so happy to be here. If you haven't caught up with us, if you haven't done day 1, 2, or 3, make sure you just scroll down on the blog, go check those out, and catch up with us. But yeah, we're going to go through this devotional today, and then we're going to go through some verses, and then that'll be it. So we are on day 4, like I said. And this devotional is all about the Good Samaritan. It's by far one of Jesus' most famous parables. Even if you're not much of a church person, you probably heard of a Good Samaritan before because it is a pretty common phrase. But sometimes when a story is so familiar, we run the risk of tuning out a little bit. It's really easy to miss the deeply convicting implications of a story when it feels like you've heard it a million times. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, the story comes in response to a guy who is just trying to justify himself before Jesus. He thinks he does a pretty good job of obeying God, that he's probably more righteous than most people, but he's trying to find a loophole in the system by asking Jesus to clarify exactly who this neighbor is that he's supposed to love as much as himself. And so Jesus begins teaching by telling him a story, of course. Jesus is always telling some stories. But in this story, this dude is mugged and left for dead on the side of a road. 2 different guys who worked at the temple. Basically, they were the pastors of the day. So think of Pastor Dudley and Pastor Dusty walking by this guy. So they came walking by, right? And both of them literally crossed to the other side of the road so they wouldn't have to encounter the mugging victim. Imagine that. They're out for a walk, see this dude who's bleeding and hurt on the floor, lying on the side of the road ahead of them, and they just think, gross, I don't really have time for that today. I'm just going to step over here and quietly walk by. It doesn't make sense, right? It's psychotic, you could say. Of course, the story has a happy ending, though, when the Samaritan, who, by the way, all the Jewish people of the day looked down upon, when he comes walking by and engages with this poor man, he goes out of his way, sacrifices his time, his supplies, his cash to make sure that this guy gets the help that he needs. And Jesus ends this story with the challenge that we should treat all people this way, essentially answering this man's question by saying, everybody is your neighbor. Now, most of us probably don't encounter mugging victims on a regular basis. At least I hope you don't. But that doesn't mean this story doesn't apply to every single day of our lives. All around us are people that need some sort of help. They need someone to talk to, they need physical things like money or food, or maybe right now it's toilet paper or groceries. Some people just need a friend right now. They need to not feel so alone. And what do we do so often? We block it all out. Head down, phone in hand, earbuds in. Our version of crossing the road is just to distract ourselves with our phones. It's not that we don't know those people are there, but we'd rather just not engage. It's so much easier to create our own little cocoon to block out the world around us, and we assume and hope everyone else will meet the needs that surround us every day. So here's what I think Jesus' 21st century moral of the story would be for us. Take out the earbuds, put down the phone, and engage. Whatever your typical method for ignoring the world around you is, make sure that people are more important than your comfort or entertainment. I'm not saying you can't use your phone at all or listen to music. I'd be listening to music, I'd be on my phone, especially right now during our quarantine. But when there are people around you, like your family, your friends, put away the distractions and engage with them. You never know what huge things God could do if you were just willing to engage, to start a conversation, to ask someone how they're doing, or to look up and see the person who legitimately needs your help in that moment. It's such a seemingly simple action that can seriously change someone's life. So don't be those first 2 guys. Don't be like Dudley and Dusty. I'm just kidding. They are way better than those first 2 guys. But let's be good Samaritans in our world. And it starts with looking up, removing distractions, and engaging. So now we're going to read Luke 10, verses 25 through 37. I'm reading NIV. You can read whatever version you want. But on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit life? Eternal life. What is written in the law? He replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place, saw him and passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. That was their currency of the day. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return I will reimburse you for any extra expense you might have." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." That verse is so good. So guys, just be encouraged to just put the distractions away, engage, and help those around you. I hope you guys enjoyed the devotional. We'll see you tomorrow.